Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar that we are having today. Today we are covering a topic that we really wanted to discuss with you with the IDF network. Today we are going to be speaking about how to develop successful diabetes projects. So as many of you may know, IDF has a program which is the Young Leaders in Diabetes, and over these 2 years, over 2018 and 2019, the young leaders will have to be developing diabetes projects in their countries. So we thought it could be a good idea if we speak with them about what they have to do to develop a successful project. And we also know that some of the Blue Circle Voices members, either they are planning on developing projects or they are already developing projects. So we thought that it could be a good idea that 3 BCB members that have developed a project that is successful present their experience. So today on the webinar, we are going to have Anna Norton. She is the CEO of Diabetes Sisters. We are also going to have as a speaker Betsy Ray. She's the founder of Diabetes Activist. Both of them, Anna and Betsy, they come from the US. And finally, we will have Liliana Thierry. She's the founder and executive director of an association which is called Cuidar. This association is from Argentina, and Cuidar in Spanish means taking care of. So let's start first with just what do we mean by a successful project. So basically, well, there are many different variables that you can take into account when seeing if a project is successful. But basically, the most important thing is that you fulfill all the objectives that you have set for your project. Another thing that is very important, because often the budget is very limited and we don't have enough money to develop our projects, is to use the resources that you have. If they are big, great. If they are not that big, it's the same, to use them in an efficient manner. And finally, well, it could be good that all the objectives that you have set are delivered timely. So as we are saying, the most important things are the objectives, the resources, and the time. And just to give you some general tips, before we start with the speakers, well, before setting your objectives, it's good to do some research. So you need to see if is your project really needed, who are you targeting, is it possible to collaborate with someone else? Of course, it's good to do some research because maybe someone else is doing something very similar. Maybe you can collaborate. What is important is that your project is something which is new, it's something that can reach a lot of people, because of course if you are planning to do something that already someone else has developed, no one will be very interested in it. Another thing, being realistic. So of course you do not need to aim at impossible things. The wish list that you may have can be very long, but you need to focus on what is possible. Even if it's something very small, it's already an advance. Of course, if you are setting unrealistic objectives and you are thinking that you're going to do a lot, when you will see that it's not possible to do that, you can become discouraged. So what is important is to be realistic and to know what is feasible to do. Another thing that is very important is, of course, being ambitious. That is completely compatible with being realistic. Is yes, you will not be able to achieve everything you want, but at some point, if your project advances, you may be able to achieve that. So you can think about the first phase of your project with smaller objectives, and then if everything goes well, you will be able to develop it further. Failing to plan is planning to fail. So basically, it's very important to plan. A lot of people, they have very clear ideas of what they have, but they never put them down on paper. They never really prepare a timeline with everything they want to do, and that is very important. If you do not plan carefully, if you do not think about all the different things that you want to develop, then it will not work. Other thing that is very important is being flexible. Of course, you may have a plan, you may have a wonderful plan with a timeline that is great, etc., but sticking 100% to it is impossible. There are always things that fail, things that do not go as planned. Maybe it's not up to you, it's because you are collaborating with someone else and that is not working at the time you were thinking. So just you have to be able to adapt yourself to the new situation, and do not get discouraged by that, because it happens to everyone. Another thing which is very relevant is learning from your mistakes. Of course, no one is born knowing everything, so it's very important to do what you think you need to do, and if at some point it doesn't work, you learn from that, and in the future you will be able to improve your future steps in your project. And finally, another thing that we suggest everyone to do when developing a plan, when developing a project, is searching for collaborators. So it's very important to have a team that supports you. It's very difficult that one single person oversees everything in a project, so it's very good to have some support. So now it's the time for our speakers. As we have done for previous webinars, we will have a Q&A at the end, but as today we have 3 different speakers, if you have any questions while our speakers are presenting, please write them on the chat. So you can see the chat at the top of the Join Me application. There is a bubble, the second one on the left, and there, if you click there, you will be able to send your questions. So now, for example, Anna will start presenting. So if you have any question for her, please send that to me, and I will ask her that at the end of her presentation. So now I'm just sharing the mouse control with Anna, and I'm muting her. Okay, Anna, it's up to you.
Hello, good morning. Can everyone hear me? I think so.
Yes, we can hear you, Anna.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. Well, good morning from Chicago. It's very early in the morning here. Thank you to the IDF and Beatriz for allowing me to be a part of this morning. I am Anna Norton, as you can see from the slide. I have been living with type 1 diabetes for 25 years. I am currently the CEO of Diabetes, which is a nationally based nonprofit organization. We provide services and support and some programs to women that live with any kind of diabetes. So any woman over the age of 18 is invited and encouraged to participate in any of our programs and services, whether they're online or in person. And I also, like I mentioned, it is early in the morning here in Chicago. It's a really pretty summer day. It looks like it's going to be. But I live here with my husband and my 10-year-old son. So, Diabetes Sisters, who are we? I mentioned we are a nationally recognized nonprofit organization that provides support and education for women that live with any kind of diabetes. And why are we here? We are here because there was a need in our community. There were no programs that were specific to women. There were no programs in the United States where women could come, have conversations with one another about their successes and their struggles and failures with diabetes, and in a confidential area, in an area where they could speak freely without being judged. And so in 2008, the organization was founded. It was founded by a woman who also lived with diabetes, who had found a lot of isolation and loneliness during her pregnancy. And so Diabetes Sisters was created on an on-site platform with some forums for women to have conversations. And by 2010, we were doing some in-person programming, having some conferences, and developing more and more and more of our programs. Our website, diabetessisters.org, it reaches over 500,000 people every year. Online, you can find a multitude of things. We have blogs that are written by women that live with diabetes, diabetes of all kinds. We have expert articles where educators contribute articles every month, and endocrinologists. We even have a legal team, so you can always search that for different archives. We have webinars similar to what we're doing today, where we discuss diabetes and and possibly a complication of it, whether it's diabetes and mental health or diabetes and kidney disease, and so on and so forth. We are run almost entirely by a volunteer base. We have a very small staff. You can see us at the very bottom lower left. There are 3 of us. So myself, who sort of leads the charge of the organization and is responsible for the successes of our programs and services. Any fundraising that we acquire through some of our partners. We have Sarah, who's in the middle. She's our director of operations. She oversees our in-person programming. And on the right is Karen, and she oversees all of our social media and our newsletter and things like that we do online. So as you can see, we are 3 women that live with diabetes working for women that live with diabetes. So very small, and our volunteer base, which is comprised of about 75 different people all over the United States. They really help with our programming in person. So they bring Diabetes Sisters to their communities. They reach out to different women in their communities. They hold monthly support meetings and are really the blood that flows through the veins of Diabetes Sisters. One of our very first programs that we started in 2010 was our Weekend for Women Conference series. It's an event that was designed for women to come, share, support one another, share their stories, and learn from experts in the field. We found that our unmet need was that we needed a meeting place for women that live with diabetes to support each other and learn from the experts. So we wanted experts to come in, talk about different aspects of life with diabetes, and we wanted the women that were attending to come and feel validated, that their feelings were validated, that their experiences were validated. Our very first conference in 2010, 100 women attended it. Then we were able to branch out. We had conferences in Los Angeles, San Francisco, and last fall we had one in the Washington, D.C. area. We have used planning committees of volunteers, of women that are in those areas to help us acquire the space, figure out train lines and airport destinations and things like that. We offer inspiring sessions with advocates and leaders and have a focus for women on setting goals, on being accountable for their health, for advocating for their health, and of course what we are made up of, which is sisterhood. So finding support within our peers. We talk a lot about some of the challenges, and I know that some of the projects that you are creating, you will encounter some challenges. And you know, although we are a small nonprofit that has had successful programming in this area, we have seen our share of challenges as well. You know, first and foremost is a lack of funding. Many years we had a lot of funding for the conference, and over the years that has slowed down. You know, there are more organizations that are competing for the same amount of dollars, and there's not more dollars to be given out. So we have found that lack of funding is a big challenge for us. Lack of interest. Sometimes women say, you know, I've come for 2 years, and now I'm just not interested anymore. And the last thing that we really encountered was competition. Other organizations doing similar conferences. And so when you're asking people to come to a conference and pay for it, pay their transportation, pay their registration, pay for their lodging and everything, it becomes very cumbersome on the patient to be able to do that. So, so some of the things that we have done, and you can see in the pictures what these conferences look like. So, you know, lots of women, the different sessions, general sessions. You can see the number of women that we have, the different groups. We have smaller groups, bigger groups. We do walks. But in last fall, we actually collaborated with another organization called the Diabetes Unconference, and it opened up our audience to more people to come in. It also allowed us to reach funders together, so that we were not all competing for the same dollar. So we brought more people to one place. We had a larger reach, and we were able to combine 2 different programs to create something that was very cohesive and still fulfilled our goals and our objectives in providing support and education. And in this case, we opened it up to some men, but we provided support and education to people living with diabetes. We also opened it up to their partners. So by expanding our group of attendees, we were able to still continue to raise funding for it and bring a group of over 100 people to a weekend in Washington, D.C. So I think that's one way to, Beatrice talked about adaptability. You know, things don't always go 100% as planned. And so this conference is a really great mirror of that. The next thing, and I talked about this, is our PODS meetup program, which stands for Part of Diabetes Sisters. PODS meetup program is a monthly online and in-person meetup for women to learn and share about their life with diabetes. And again, we found that there was an unmet need. There wasn't a small community of women that live with diabetes where they could learn and they could share without fear of being judged. And so after our very first conference in 2010, we found from the women that had come that 1 weekend a year was not enough for them, that they wanted more support, they wanted more sisterhood. And so we left that conference in 2010 with one woman in Raleigh, North Carolina saying, I will bring Diabetes Sisters to my home. I will bring it to my living room. And from there, we developed an educational curriculum. We began to train women to facilitate meetings. And we did that with a very small staff again. We did that with volunteers on the ground running. We did that because there was a lot of passion from the women living with diabetes, wanting not only to help themselves, but to help others. 8 years later, we have 54 leaders in 21 states, in California, Florida, New York, many different states. And it even evolved to include an online component. So once a month, we have a leader who works online, again, in a forum similar to this webinar, with a camera screen. And so the women from all over the country are online and they're having the same conversations and they're learning the same things and they're talking about the same successes and challenges that they face with diabetes. Every year we have over 1,400 women that attend these meetups. And like everything, you know, we find that there are challenges. We have to find competent and enthusiastic leaders, women that are interested in serving their community of women living with diabetes. And we find that over time, sometimes they lose their motivation, sometimes they lose their drive, or that in their communities they're not able to garner up a group of women, you know. And so we work with them every year. One of the things that we do is we offer consistent training and conversations with them. We meet with them online quarterly and talk about these issues that they have, about recruiting women and retaining them in these groups. And once a year, we hold a leadership institute where they all come to one place and we train them. We give them time to talk about their own health and not just the health of the women that they're serving. And so that has been very successful for us over the years. Another thing that we developed because of an unmet need in our community was a minority initiative program. We wanted to reach women in underserved communities. We noticed that our meetups had very similar women of a certain age. They all kind of look the same. And so we wanted to reach women, African American women, Hispanic, Latina women, and South Asian women, just to start. And so what we did was we went to work in some areas that we knew, that we had connections from people that we had met in the diabetes circuit. In Washington, D.C., we met up with a church group, a large church in the area that has a health ministry, had a lot of women that were already engaged in the ministry and wanted to know more about their health. In Miami, we focused on a medical center that catered to women that are Hispanic and Spanish only. And so we're able to do these things and then started to ask them, what is it that you need in this community? What kind of education do you need? What kind of support do you need? And so the women told us, we need to understand carbohydrate counting or eating in foods that are cultural for us. You know, Hispanic women wanted to eat beans and they wanted to eat tropical fruits that were higher in sugar content than others. And so we were able to find different educators, again, by working and adapting to our environment and asking them, can you come and speak to this group of women? Can you speak in Spanish? Can you help us develop some materials in Spanish? For our African American women and our Asian American women, we did the same. We asked them culturally, what do you need? And so we were able to start doing smaller programming for this, but we have been doing it since 2006. And just working with these different groups and realizing that we have to be adaptable in our approach, and that each culture is different in how they'd like to be approached, and each culture is different in who they'd like to attend the programming. So, so that has been a program that started very small for us and is growing. It's not as large as we'd like for it to be yet, but we will get there. What's our next one? Our next one is a program that we started this year. It's a Facebook Live series. And for this one, we wanted to bring things to the digital world. We wanted to bring it to people that were in their offices, in living rooms, in their, at their desks, and we wanted to provide them some more support and education without them having to leave their home. We wanted something modern, something, with time. And this is where one of our collaborations came to fruition. We worked with the National Kidney Foundation and Women Heart, both nonprofit organizations here in the United States that focus on different aspects, but things that are very, very relevant for people that live with diabetes, and that is kidney disease and heart disease. And so we just decided that we would work together to create a 3-series program to focus on 3 different things relating to diabetes. One being diabetes and kidneys, the other one being diabetes and heart disease, and then finally diabetes and women's issues, whether they be pregnancy or menopause or bone density or things like that. And so we went online, we promoted it, and to date we have over 30,000 views of the different videos, and you can find them. You can find them on our Facebook page. You can find them on our YouTube channel. You can find them on our website. They're very good. They're informative, not very long, very interesting. And we use experts and patients to have these conversations. And again, our challenge is the viewership, and we just have been boosting the posts, sharing the information, asking our community to share it as well. Watch it and share it. And that has been very successful, and we hope to do it again in 2019. And that's it for now. We do many more things. I encourage you to come to our website at diabetessisters.org, or if you have any questions, general questions, you can send them to our info box, or if you wanted to send me any messages, I can be reached at anna@diabetessisters.org. And thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot, Anna, for the presentation. It was super interesting. Actually, some of the challenges that you are facing are quite similar to the ones IDF is facing also with BCBs. So we will take note of everything you have explained, and yeah, it's very interesting to hear that. I was just checking at the chat to see if someone had any question for you, and it seems like no one has any questions so far, so I'm just going to mute you now, and yes, please stay still on the webinar, because maybe someone will have a question towards the end of it.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm just unmuting Betsy. So hello, Betsy. She will be presenting herself, and I'm just going to share control with Betsy so she can move the slides. Hello, Betsy. Can you hear us?
Hey, Triz.
Great, perfect. So I'm muting myself again, and you can go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for that, and thank all of you who are here to learn. This is a great opportunity. I'm going to teach today about hosting a successful awareness campaign. And this kind of started, I'll give you just a little bit of background and into my organization, but I'll preface that with, if you have other questions that we can't answer here today, you're welcome to contact through my website address or phone number. And so we're going to talk a bit about a successful awareness campaign. And that particular issue started out for my organization, which specifically works to assist people with diabetes optimizing their health over and above and outside of what they get in their medical system, as well as we do advocacy on a public and political level, and we work specifically with people with diabetes to help them to problem solve things that are going on, you know, in their lives with employers or what have you. But I started this in about 2009, and then in 2013-14 got connected with a gal in Georgia who we started talking to each other through social media. I was diagnosed in a DKA coma at age 3. My daughter was diagnosed at age 16 with type 1, and her daughter was diagnosed as a young child, and we had a lot in common. And she ran an organization called test1drug.org, and I, of course, have diabetes activists. And we decided that we would join forces and collaborate to try to work with some of the issues surrounding diabetes and the diagnosis of diabetes, which we've had a lot of problems here in the U.S. We formed a coalition called Uprising Against Diabetes, which stands for Uprising Against DKA, which stands for United Parents and Ketoacidosis Diagnosis. And we decided that we needed to go into this because we have had a multitude of deaths of children in the U.S., but this is a global problem. And in particular, within 2 months of our contact here and starting to work through some of these things, we had 2 children that you can see pictured here, Kicey Terry and David Brown, who died within 4 days of each other. And we started looking into what was happening and where all of these things were coming from. What we realized was that we wanted to do an awareness campaign, but our awareness campaign in trying to get to the real goal of what that campaign had to be, becoming much bigger than what we initially started out thinking we were going to do. We realized that there was a basic problem in our culture, and this is a global culture, with our best first responders not being educated about diabetes, or let's say not educated from the right perspective, because the vast majority of people are taught that diabetes is to overweight, middle-aged, sedentary people. So we had to try to figure out how to make an awareness campaign work to actually educate a larger public so that we could get parents on board so that they knew what they were looking for when it came to the symptoms. And on top of that, we also discovered that we have a lot of doctors in the U.S. who, because they're given a certain amount of training with diabetes when they're in medical school, once they graduate, they also get educated by the populace around them, and had this same misperception about diabetes being a certain. So when children were coming into their offices and they were sick, they were missing the diagnosis. And we don't want to say that that is a negative connotation when it comes to our medical system, other than that they're not receiving enough training, and we're trying to work with getting them on board with that. But it's an indicator of how a process can trickle down and turn into something else at the bottom. And so we realized that we had to work with a whole bunch of things, including the stigma that surrounds diabetes, and it became a much bigger issue. And this is where, you know, you can pick a project and it can be small in the outset, but then it can start to balloon into something that is something you have to adapt and really evolve into. What we did is we kept the test1drop.org website. We kept that as a navigational tool to send people to. And we took my website and we cleared it of all information that was on it, and we used it for the campaign. So it became the clearinghouse for sample template media press releases and introduction letters for poster campaigns and instructions on how to do all of these things, calendars for everything that we were doing as we went along. We also added a city lighting campaign in every city across the United States and tried to get that running. We added a Twitter feed campaign, an Instagram campaign. So we were trying to really focus our primary goal, educating people who did not know about diabetes because either they didn't have it in, they had been incorrectly educated or incompletely educated. And so my website became the ground zero for the actual campaign and getting people involved in the campaign. And the Test One Drop site was the place where we sent people to help them to understand more about diabetes. In that vein, we utilized the already existing Test One Drop poster and worked with member leaders across the diabetes online community to establish posters that could be put out during the month of November. We were specifically targeting World Diabetes Day as the day everything would go, but we also were working prior to that in roughly the 3 weeks prior to get posters out in all kinds of public places. So we used the existing Test One Drop poster in doctors' offices, pediatricians' offices, and other facility locations. And then I developed a drop poster as a treasure hunt, if you will, with no information on it other than the address of the website. And we pasted that everywhere public. And we engaged Starbucks to do Twitter campaigns on November 14th to add the test1drop.org address out to people. And we actually were able to get to the top of the Twitter feed, which is no small feat when you're starting from an acute situation and you're hitting the ground running. It was pretty awesome for us. And posters we still see in some places them hung, and this was in 2015. So it evolved into trying to coordinate cities across the country to light blue. We also did a memorial for the children that we knew that we have lost, although there are many that we don't know about because the United States are not required to report deaths due to DKA. So all of the project has branched out into everything from understanding and trying to implement, understanding the need for and trying to implement studies to actually get real numbers, policies, support, as well as policies to require things like simple finger sticks to rule in or rule out type 1 diabetes. So it's been a really interesting, evolving kaleidoscope of different things. We culminated in the Colorado in a proclamation for Denver and the state of Colorado for the month of November to be National to be State Diabetes Awareness Month. And that was really kind of a huge thing for us because Colorado has the highest incidence of type 1 diagnosis in the United States, and we're Finland in Europe. So this, as the epicenter of the campaign, it was really important for us to be able to, be acknowledged with recognition of the issue. And so now our buildings in November, our city buildings will light blue on November 14th. I was at the TEDx talk in Vail because it started out as an opportunity to share with TEDx a device that I had created. And instead, I took the opportunity to share with the TEDx organization that what was more important, the reason why it was necessary. And so I was able to take one of the families, Kaisi Terry's family, with me to that TED Talk. And so we were able to get more viewership. And our primary goal in all of this was to really get out to the people who didn't understand diabetes, and specifically for anyone who worked with children. It also allowed us to start sharing with people the fact that the FDA approved the TinaQuant test in 2013 for diagnosis of diabetes. It's not the perfect answer because it's an A1C, and unless you have a 60-second machine, which we don't have, it takes too long to get an A1C result. But it does help us in opening up a bigger dialogue about what can we do right now. And it also opened the ability to start a relationship with the Barbara Davis Center here in Denver, which is the second leading diabetes center in the world, getting involved with their ASPRO, which stands for all autoimmune screening for all kids. And they have the ability to test to get autoantibodies to diabetes 3 years in advance of diagnosis. So we're combining all of our groups in collaboration to be able to work on early diagnosis. After Barbara Davis did studies, we understand that children have, there's about a 96% probability that they will be diagnosed in DKA if they are between 3 and 5 years old, and a 64% probability between 5 and 7 years old, and they will suffer lifetime permanent handicap based on the severity of the DKA at diagnosis. So we're trying to shut it down. And we, during the course of the campaign, what we found was that we had to deal with a lot of different issues that we hadn't expected were going to come out. We experienced some cyberbullying, had some weird things that happened with an attempted sabotage of the campaign, and that happened on the eve of World Diabetes Day. We kind of escaped that bullet because the attack on France preempted everything. But on the one side of it, in order to build a really large campaign, in this day and age, it does require social media. It requires all of the technologies that we have. But on the other side of that fence, you also have all of the problems that come along with that, such as cyberbullying and trolls, and all of those things that we, in the diabetes environment, don't exist. But at the end of the day, it is continuing to grow, and it's turning into things that are going to help to make changes, whether it's at a political level, whether it's at a person-to-person level, and the big goal is that we continue to get out there to the people who don't understand much about diabetes. If you have further inquiries or there's something that I can help you with, you certainly are welcome to contact me at www.diabetesactivist.com. My phone number is there as well as my email address, and I'm open to questions.
So thanks a lot, Betsy, for sharing your experience with this campaign. Yeah, it's great to learn a bit more about your organization. And if someone wants to contact you, well, they can also write to us and we will facilitate the connection. So far, no one has sent any questions. So let's move to the third presentation, and maybe towards the end, someone will submit any other question so we can have a Q&A afterwards. So I'm muting you now, Betsy. And I am unmuting Estefania. Okay, hello, Estefania. Hello, Steffi.
Hi.
Hi, Steffi, how are you? So I'm going to share the mouse control with you so you can move the slides, and I'm going to mute myself. So just for everyone to know, this presentation was supposed to be made by Liliana Thierry. She's the founder and executive director from Argentina, and she's also a member of Voices. But Liliana, she understands English, but she doesn't feel confident to speak it. So it's one collaborator of Cuidar, of the association, who is also a member of the Young Leaders Program, both in IDF and in Cuidar, who will be making the presentation for her. Go ahead, Steffi.
Great. Well, hi everyone. My name is Estefania. As Beatriz said, I am mentor of the Young Leaders Program, and I am a young leader in Cuidar. I want to introduce you to Liliana Thierry. She is the founder and executive director of the Association for the Care of Diabetes in Argentina, Cuidar, and she's also a member of the Blue Circle Voices network of the IDF.
Hi, I am Liliana. I want to thank IDF for letting me participate in this webinar. My English is awful. I want to thank also Liliana for helping me to tell you the institutional history of Cuidar, my main project that is inevitably my personal history.
Well, the first time Liliana ever heard about type 1 diabetes was the day her daughter, with just 2 years old, was diagnosed. The first question she asked to the physician was for how many days her little daughter would have to tolerate those horrible pricks. All her life was the doctor's answer, and that answer took her 2 years to recover from the emotional breakdown that meant to her. Liliana wanted to become researcher, physician, and scientific to discover the cure, and also wanted to take her daughter's place and have diabetes herself. She soon realized that she would never change the fact that her daughter had diabetes. But on the other hand, she knew that she could accompany her and help her have a fulfilling and happy life. So, as to never let diabetes impede her from achieving any dream, goal, or project. To make that possible, she knew she would need education, information, and knowledge to avoid diabetes controlling her daughter. She also understood that she wouldn't make it possible alone. That's why for Liliana it was valuable, important, and fundamental need to meet other parents that were facing the same situation, and that her daughter could also meet other children like her who live with type 1 diabetes. That's why Liliana looked for different ways to meet, gather, and join up moms and dads. It was not easy. Maybe you can think that Google was just beginning and social networks didn't exist yet. However, not only she could meet other parents, but in 2001, Liliana founded Cuidar, a non-profit civil association created thanks to the initiative, concern, and necessity of a group of parents of kids living with diabetes. The beginnings were really difficult. They did not even have a place for Cuidar, and that's why in those days, and for many years, Liliana's garage was the place in the world for Cuidar. In that way, they started. They knew that in the world, great things were also started in a garage. Because of the seriousness, responsibility, and high compromise level that all these parents demonstrated, Cuidar became, in all these years, the most important reference in type 1 diabetes in Argentina, and an entity with international projection. Its fastest growing organization with the greater convening power, with the biggest activity generation, programs, and projects that give support to thousands of children and youth with diabetes and their families. In Cuidar, we are proud of our beginning, because that group of parents could transform a negative and painful situation, as the diagnosis of type 1 diabetes of their children, into a positive situation that let them help others. Most NGOs are founded by people who are really passionate for the cause. However, giving origin, maintaining throughout time, and carrying out an NGO implies much more than just passion and will. In order to add skills to the passion, Liliana wanted to build an entity that would be effective in its actions, to be able to give the best possible answers to the needs and conflicts of the families that come to Cuidar. That is why the training of all the members of the organization was always a topic of interest and concern for Liliana. That's why all the members of Cuidar were trained not only in diabetes, but also in communication, promotion, planning, management, advocacy, evaluation, and conflict resolutions. That allowed them to create a strong, transparent, and sustainable organization. If we take into account that in organizations like Cuidar, an infinite number of decisions are made daily, the more successful they are, greater are the chances of improving the way of living with diabetes. Liliana is convinced that undoubtedly the best decision that was taken in Cuidar through all these years was to make focus only in type 1 diabetes. So, if we take into account that type 1 diabetes only represents the 10% of the total number of people living with diabetes, that decision meant setting aside 9 people out of 10 that could approach our NGO. That's why Cuidar had to multiply its efforts by 9 to become visible as an NGO, and also to make type 1 diabetes visible, the most unknown condition between the different diabetes types. That's why, to achieve our mission, we knew that we need allies. Undoubtedly, the first allies in those early times were mass media. Cuidar made a big effort to generate innovative projects, programs, and actions that quickly caught the attention of the media. It was in that way that Cuidar managed to position itself within traditional mass media, graphic, television, and radio. But also, through Liliana's impulse, Cuidar achieved spaces of diffusion, like shopping centers, supermarkets, cash lines, on closed television circuits in subway stations, posters in public places, radio spots, in giant LED screen in the most strategic places of Buenos Aires, where type 1 diabetes became visible as never had happened before. Once again, the effort and the high level of commitment allowed to fulfill this objective. If we take into account that organizations such as Cuidar generally have insufficient resources compared to the infinite demands of the population to which the organization helps, we can say that Cuidar, another important and successful decision, was taken. Although Cuidar could have been an organization based on charity and only generate resources based on the support for a good cause, once again, the path chosen by Cuidar was to make a greater institutional effort and work to develop projects and programs to create synergy with each stakeholder. Nowadays, Cuidar has more allies than donors, who choose to share and accompany actions and not just help or donate because it is a good cause. Cuidar also knew how to build alliances with the government at local, provincial, national, as well as international level. The organization received the institutional sponsorship of different organizations such as the Pan American Health Organization, the Information Center of the United Nations, UNICEF, among others. We must not lose sight of the beginnings of Cuidar. Without practically anything, through commitment and teamwork, goals were overcome. A characteristic that defines Cuidar is to always stay true to its mission and vision. This is to develop its project with a high level of professionalism. This means always more efforts, more persistence, and that is precisely what happened with one of the most ambitious projects of Cuidar. Before launching into public policy advocacy, in Cuidar we elaborated and developed the first research study on childhood diabetes. That took 2 years of work, but that allowed us to collect data and obtain results that legitimized many of our later advocacy actions. But having this data as the result of the first research study on type 1 diabetes done by Cuidar was not enough to carry on with these advocacy actions. That's why Liliana also promotes the creation of the training program Young Leaders of Cuidar, to come with the best and most valuable interlocutors that an advocacy action could have, young people living with diabetes themselves. Year after year, young people are trained in Cuidar, and then they add their efforts to the work carried out by the organization, including actions to influence in public policies. Added to the many activities that Cuidar does to cover the needs of people living with diabetes, there are actions of advocacy in public policy, which is a special interest to Cuidar. The many actions done in previous years are not isolated or improvised. They are the result of a clear strategy that Liliana, as leader of the organization, promotes in order to ensure successful results, even when the process to achieve them demands more efforts and time. This is how Cuidar has managed to hold meetings with the highest government authorities in the country, like deputies, senators, health ministers, and the governor of Buenos Aires. Even with Mauricio Macri, the current Argentinian president. Again, Cuidar, that organization that emerged from the restlessness, need, and deep love from parents of children with diabetes, today manages to put on the map people with type 1 diabetes and their needs, as few organizations have done in our country. Liliana always expresses that although it is true that we cannot change the fact that a child, adolescent, or young person has type 1 diabetes, if we can change the view, the information, and the knowledge that society has about this chronic condition, we can change and improve access to treatments. We can create social awareness, influence, and modify policies, and achieving those changes depends on each one of us. Personally, I would like to express as a young leader of Cuidar, with 23 years old and 21 living with type 1 diabetes, that I am deeply grateful to those parents who initiated Cuidar, in particular to one of them. Liliana does not know, but I dare to add another slide in her presentation. I am that girl of only 2 years old. Sorry for this. That you saw at the beginning of this presentation. Liliana is my mom. And even if she says that I was her inspiration to create Cuidar, today I want to publicly express to her that no one thought and inspired me as much as she did. I have seen her the last 21 years dedicating her life, day after day, to people who, like me, live with type 1 diabetes, without everyone and without ever lowering her arms. I want to thank her for her love, an unconditional commitment to the cause, and tell her how happy and proud I am that she's my mom. So thank you, everyone, and sorry for my crying a little bit.
Wow.
Thanks to you, Steffi, and thanks to Liliana also. It's normal to cry. Well, but they are tears of happiness. You have a wonderful mom. I know her myself, so I can tell that. Thanks a lot for your presentation, and thanks a lot for explaining how you inspired your mom to create with her. I know that this association supports a lot of children with diabetes in Argentina, and also a lot of parents of the children with diabetes. So you are doing an amazing work. Thank you, Liliana. Muchas gracias, Liliana. And thanks to Steffi as well for being the inspiration for this organization and also for the presentation today. Thanks to both of you.
Beatriz. Thank you very much.
So, well, I don't think we have really any questions. We just have, some people really saying thank you to all the speakers. Narsimha from India, he's telling to Stefania to be brave. She is brave, so yeah, this is a good thing, actually. As I said, there are tears, but they are tears of happiness. So we don't have really any questions today. It seems that it's clear for everyone, so I'm just going to unmute all the speakers today, just to thank them again. Okay, so thanks to Anna Norton, thanks to Betsy Ray, and thanks to Liliana and to Stefania for your presentations. It has been great to learn about your 3 different projects. They are very different projects, and you have shared the idea that, well, it's not easy to come up with an idea and to develop this project, but it's always worth it. So thanks a lot to the 3 of you.
Thank you, Beatriz. And
thank you, Beatriz.
I do have a question.
Yes, please go ahead.
Would it be possible for you to facilitate our ability to get into contact with each other through something like a directory of yours, so that we can bring the things that we have to the table and assist each other in any ways that we can with, all of our respective organizations? Because I think that the one thing that we have in common through all of this is the emotion that goes behind what we do and the passion behind what we do. But we also have such amazing skills and strengths that we can bring to the table to try to, make things that we do in our own respective areas more dynamic.
Yes, of course. So actually, we have created a Facebook group for the Blue Circle Voices and also for the young leaders. So I'm not sure if you have already joined the group, but of course you can get in touch with your fellow PCB members in there. And also we will think about how to create this directory. Also, I don't know if you are aware, we have this forum on the IDF network, on the IDF website, sorry. So you have the password to access that, and also you can write on this forum, and you can ask for advice from your fellow BCBs, etc. So definitely there is a possibility to connect you all. I see that someone has just joined, and she's saying that that she missed the meeting. The recording of this webinar is going to be made available to everyone, so we are going to be sending the link through email, and we are also going to put that on the Facebook group. So everyone will be able to listen to it again, do not worry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for having us today.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Beatriz. Thank you for the idea.
Okay, so thanks to everyone, and basically we will be in contact again. If anyone listening to this webinar after it has been recorded has any questions, you have our emails here, so you just have to connect with us on email and let us know if you have any questions for one of our speakers. We will pass that to them. So again, we encourage you to develop your own projects. Many times it's difficult, but the result is always worth it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.